Hey everyone, welcome to week 5 and moving along. So this is a little bit of a more kind of a planning week instead of exploring additional technologies. Kind of give you a break from learning something new to using something you've already learned and turning it into a lesson for whatever your educational setting is. So this week we're going to be talking about couple things. First of all, I have a survey that I'd like you to access. This is just going to give me some information about whether or not you have access to things like robots, veneer probes, 3D printers, or 3D pens. And then are you close enough to WOO to check out technology to explore if you don't have access? And then just a couple questions about how the course is going for you. So your first assignment is to complete the technology survey, and then we will also be looking at starting to really think about how to turn these ideas for using technology into a plan for your educational setting. So this week I'm going to have you do 2 projects that are related to this. Before you start the projects, you have a reading response. So this week, the reading response is on Jamboard. Many of you may have used this during COVID if you were taking classes or even with your students. So this is a Google app product that you can use. So when you get to the Jamboard, there'll be 3 questions. Share your experience with using the backwards design process. So if you have no experience, just say no experience. But if you have used it, some of you I know who have been in my classes may have already been through this process a number of times. So please share that. Go to the second Jamboard, define backwards design, and then why is it more effective to use a backwards design process when planning units? So you'll get that information by doing the reading this week, which happens to be about backwards design. So I have a couple of chapters here that you can take a look at. There's an introduction here. I would say skim these. You definitely do not need to read these verbatim. There's also, we're going to be using a template to look at planning a lesson moving forward. And then again, some information on 3D modeling because your lesson plan for this week is going to be on 3D. So back to the backwards design. So these 2, I just want to make it clear that these 2, the backwards design and the lesson plan, are 2 different processes. So we're going to go forward with doing a quick plan for a lesson using the template without doing the backwards design on it. And then we're going to start backwards design draft for the future lesson you're planning. So the future lesson you're planning is going to be for a STEM lesson that incorporates all 4 content areas. And so it's a little more complex and in-depth, and so this process makes sense to use. So we'll stick with this one first. So to look at that, I'm going to pull up, this is the actual template that you're going to be using to plan a lesson. This is the STEM lesson you're going to plan going forward. So you're going to identify a science, this says an NGSS standard with engineering, either within the standard or an additional engineering standard, a math common core state standard, and a ISTE or ISTE standard for technology. So you should have 4 standards or 3 if the engineering is incorporated in the NGSS standard you pick, and I'll talk a little more about that. So once you have your standards identified, so you're going to put those here, and then you're going to then pull out from each of those standards big ideas and key concepts, essential questions that will anchor the student's learning, the skills that are needed to achieve the results for your lesson, learning targets for these. Remember, you need to make sure you have learning targets that address all standards. So you could have a learning target that addresses multiple standards in one target, or you could have a target for each of the actual content areas. And then was acceptable evidence to show for your desired results, meaning what evidence are you going to collect from students that they met your targets. So those are the steps that you're going to use to plan this lesson. And so this week you're going to start thinking about a lesson, a STEM lesson that you want to plan to use in your educational setting that incorporates all 4 of those content areas. So engineering, math, science, and technology. And you're going to start mapping that out over the next couple of weeks. So this week you're going to do a draft of that, and understanding and knowing that the draft's probably going to be pretty basic and probably going to get much feedback. You'll actually, I will try to set it up so you can swap with someone or see each other's and get some ideas from that. But this is a process that might take some time, so we're going to take a couple of weeks to work on this while we get ready to plan our lesson. Okay, so this is for the STEM, the full STEM lesson that incorporates all 4 standards. So in addition to this mapping that out or starting to map that out as a draft, you're going to actually do a lesson plan for a 3D lesson, model lesson. So last week you had to actually think about creating a 3D model. And so this week you're just going to actually write up a lesson plan that details an assignment that you could do with kids using some sort of 3D modeling. And so in this case, you're going to use the 5E learning cycle template for the lesson plan, and that's linked here. So the 5E lesson plan is kind of incorporates those 5 E's we've talked about. So engaging, exploring, explaining, elaborating, and evaluating, which are really important for science inquiry or any kind of inquiry-based lesson. And so this doesn't have to be science per se. This could actually be math/science. It could be a literacy/science. So think about how you can, how you're going to use 3D models in your setting. So you'll need to first identify the standards, learning targets, thinking about what students need to know, any science or other vocabulary, and then just detail out using these different categories how you're going to plan the lesson. So again, these are just kind of initial preliminary drafts of lesson plans and backwards design. I don't anticipate that they'll be finished products, and so I will give you feedback and then we will be able to work from there. So again, this one is the 3D model lesson. So using the stuff, the work that you did last week on 3D models, you're going to plan that lesson. So for week 5, that is the assignments that you'll be completing this week. And so if you have any questions, make sure to email me or sign up for office hours up at the top of the course shell, and have some fun thinking about and taking those ideas you had and making them more concrete in terms of lessons. And I look forward to seeing your work. Have a good week.